I tell you what, I am sick and tired of these immigrants, mostly my father. He came here from Italy, these immigrants. They always want you to call home so they can tell you to get a real job. It's like, maybe I'd have a real job if you weren't stealing them all, Dad! I could be a marketing guy, you know why? Because I'm a real American. I was born in this country. I didn't float over here on a goddamn ravioli.
So many people get, like, they see a really good comic. This is what I think a pitfall is. You see a really good comic who is being funny and saying something interesting in the realm of an argument. Like, they're saying something that's like meaningful or makes a good point or whatever. And I think they think, oh, well, I want to do that. So I'll start trying to find ways to be interesting and whatever. And it's like, not that that's not important, but it's the way easier thing to do, in my opinion. The way harder thing to do is to just find the funniest things and then dress it up like an argument.
Let's go from there into what we want to talk about here today, and that's those goddamn immigrants. I listened.
What a transition!
Yeah. There are some cases where if they
stop the pod there, we all get canceled.
Yes.
Right. That's it. Just take it out of context. That's the whole thing.
Well, except for me, I'd be fine.
You can't laugh at that.
Welcome to You Can't Laugh at That. This is the podcast where we take topics that you can't laugh at, and then we prove that you can by bringing on comedians who have done just that. Today's guest, well, first of all, my name is David Horning, and with me today is in replacement of Steve Mers, who is on some mission with a camera somewhere, probably shooting some unmentionable video. Today we have Gheramy Demery as in the co-pilot's chair. Gheramy,
I'm sorry I'm not coming from the Bay Area like some people. Some people do around here.
Gheramy don't need no background filters.
I don't need no background. I just blur it out so you don't see all the weird shit I have in this room.
Yeah, just a bunch of GIMP suits and stuff hanging up in the background.
Here's a little preview.
Oh yeah, no.
You don't want to see this kind of weird shit.
You have a face for radio, Gheramy. You have a room for radio. That's right. Joining us today, he does not have a face for radio. He has a face for all occasions. He is the very funny Brian Parise, who is a comedy writer. He's written for Last Week Tonight. He's written for Patriot Act. He's been on New Faces. He performs all over New York, festivals around the country, and you produce a show called The Pasta Show in Brooklyn. Is that still a thing?
That died during the pandemic, so I've not yet brought it back. I may someday, but yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks for joining the podcast, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Where are you based? Where are you based out of?
I'm in Brooklyn, so yeah, I live in Fort Greene. And I've been in New York now for kind of a while, maybe 9 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Originally from Massachusetts, right?
Yeah. I grew up in Massachusetts. I started comedy down in the DC area and then moved up here.
Okay. How long were you doing it in DC before you made the move?
Probably about 6 years. Okay. Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. So you had a decent body of work. So you weren't just walking into the New York comedy scene, kicking down.
Yeah. I had done Montreal, sort of right before I moved. So yeah, I had kind of done and gotten in at the clubs down there before moving up here. But it's funny because it doesn't help. It helps in the sense of you're better, but it doesn't. It's not like they're oh, you came here from a different city. Okay.
No one here's done that.
Yeah, it's so nobody. It's great to come here and nobody cares, and you're just at the open mic level again.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
Even with JFL.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think I probably also did a bad job. I didn't really know how to. I've never been good at the networking element of comedy, and I don't even know that I would tell people that I'd just be hey, I can't I can't. I just moved here. Can I be on your comedy show? I'm. And then after about a year, people were hey, tell people that you have this credit and like send a clip. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I've never known anything early on. So
got it. And it still feels weird to just be like, hey, Brian Parise, JFL. You may recognize me from this is one of the new faces.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Like deeply, who cares?
Yeah. Right. That's just everyone's first impression from you. Oh, the guy who just introduces himself by his credits. Cool.
Right. Yeah.
If I would have known any better, you look like a professional fencer.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. The facial hair is very like I could wield a sword.
You do. You look like you'd wield a sword.
Yeah. There's a Zorro element to it.
That's an onstage persona that you haven't tapped into. There's not enough comedians who bring who bring
Zorro energy.
Weapon. Yeah.
That's my observational humor for the podcast for those who aren't watching.
Yeah, Jeremy's just practicing how he's going to introduce you if you ever host this show that you're on. That's what that was. Cool. So let's go from there into what we want to talk about here today, and that's those goddamn immigrants. I listened.
What a transition!
Yeah. There are some cases where if
they stop the pod there, we all get canceled.
Yes.
Right. That's it. Just take it out of context. That's the whole thing.
Well, except for me, I'd be fine.
Yeah.
And, I'll tell you that. We'll get into that later.
Yes, we will. Yeah. Absolutely. Your album, Last Wishes, that came out in 2000. Was it last summer that it came out?
End of last year, around the election.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Actually, it came out on election day, which, by the way, if you're ever releasing an album, terrible idea.
Really? I would think after all of that just bombardment of negativity and toxicity that just like, let's laugh.
Well, it was still happening at that point, I think was the thing. But yeah, it's more just like if you're trying to post on social media about something, election day. I remember like I'm writing the post like, hey, I know everybody's kind of paying attention to other things, but I know the future of the country is sort of up in the balance, but if you guys could check out my album, yeah.
Well, it was like the world's longest election day too, because it went on for 10 days later, it seemed like.
And to some people, it's still happening.
Where at least the first time, at least the one time Trump won, we found out the next morning,
Right.
It was like one of those Band-Aids you just got to tear right the fuck off. And then, okay, cool. We can move on with our lives.
Right. So what Jeremy's saying is your album should have come out at election day 2016.
Yeah. I missed my chance.
Yeah. So I mean, and this was one of the issues in the election was immigration, immigrants, and then the way you built this bit kind of subverts that in a few different ways, and I want to get into that. So we'll play the bit, we'll talk about it, and then go from there. So I don't know if there's any way you want to set up the bit. Where was the album recorded?
I was in D.C. I was in Washington D.C. at a in the place called the Big Hunt. It's a bar in D.C. It's like in the basement of it, and a place that's the name of the bar, but it's called Underground Comedy D.C. And it's a great, they're great, and they have. I think that place is maybe not happening right now. I'm not sure what the future of that place is after the pandemic, but they're still doing shows at different venues in D.C.
I tell you what, I am sick and tired of these immigrants, mostly my father. He came here from Italy, these immigrants. They always want you to call home so they can tell you to get a real job. It's like maybe I'd have a real job if you weren't stealing them all, Dad! I could be a marketing guy, you know why? Because I'm a real American. I was born in this country. I didn't float over here on a goddamn ravioli. I was born in the USA. I don't care if I literally wouldn't exist without you. You don't come to my country and teach me how to play Little League Baseball. Fucking immigrants with their golf shirts and their sleep apnea. Hey, immigrants, why don't you try staying awake through the whole movie just once? Before you say it wasn't as good as The Godfather. How do you know? You were asleep in the recliner, sweating like a room temperature pepperoni? Shut up, Dad! Shut up! I don't actually hate immigrants. Just the one.
All right. Did this bit start with your dad or did it start with immigrants? Kind of take us through the conception of it.
It was always my dad. Yeah, it was always, I don't have another bit that's like these goddamn immigrants, and then I just don't bring him into it.
Yeah.
And I talk about immigrants. I hated him, and just all the things I hate about. No, it's always it's always been my dad. I think the basic idea of it is to make fun of, parody, some of the language that's used when people talk about immigrants. But the interesting thing is, like, when you make it one person who, it's just like, I'm just airing grievances that I have with a person. And I think, a lot of what immigrant hate is misdirected grievances. So I'm kind of just doing that live, very transparently, airing shit about my dad, which is also just fun for me as a comic to find a way in the midst of a bit to talk shit about my father. So that's kind of the idea. It definitely changed a lot. Excuse me. It changed a lot. Like it wasn't one of those bits that just like came out and worked. It was like, it always had part of it working. And then there were definitely a lot of times when I was like, oh, can't do that. Oh, got to do this a little bit. Like, so it definitely took a while to make it work the way I wanted it to. And honestly, it was one of the bits that, like, occasionally you would get an audience that was wrong for the bit. And so I wasn't that worried going into the album recording, but like in the week when I was like running the whole, album in the weeks before, like it was one of the bits that like, it didn't bomb, but it wouldn't quite hit right. And I think it's just, if you get a crowd that's very woke and liberal and like, they're like, they'll get it eventually. But when you first start with it, these goddamn immigrants, like as soon as you hit, like, they're like, oh, what? Like, they're like, they jump ship immediately.
Well, you hit one of those
they're
trigger
in the water
words.
And they'll sort of like start to paddle back to you. And like, by the end of the bit, you might get them on board, but it hurts the bit to have people being like, wait, is this okay to laugh at for like 30 seconds? So there's that crowd. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's people that were gonna cheer when I said these goddamn immigrants. And then you say mostly just my father, and they're like, oh, wait, what? Like, like there's that other crowd that if you head, out into the country enough, like people were just, ready to like rally behind me. And, so like there's that thing of like, and then they don't agree with the rest of the bit because I'm making fun of them, basically. So those are the two pitfalls that you would run into, just going around to different audiences doing this bit. But yeah.
Right. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this bit, because as a comic, I love it. I love the parallel. I love you subvert the expectation right away. I'm sick and tired of these immigrants. And, you can kind of feel the uh-oh from the audience. And I love that. I love working in that tension, having been built. And then mostly my father. And you can kind of feel the exhale from the audience in the recording itself. And I would assume that that's the case in a lot of times when you bring that to the stage. Was that a way to kind of bring those more woke audience members back? Because you quickly. Oh,
you have to get off of that.
Yeah.
ASAP. I think. I could do it for another line, but the other thing is, people aren't. If I wasn't starting with that bit. Let's put it that way. So by the time you've gotten there, you kind of know me a little. Enough to know that I'm probably not about to, So you're sort of there a little bit already. But yeah, the idea is basically like cut that out pretty quickly, and I don't leave a lot of pause in there because I literally, all it takes is one woo to ruin the vibe of that bit. And if somebody woos in between these goddamn immigrants and mostly just my father, whoa, there's no coming back from that. It's a different vibe. The crowd starts looking at that guy because it's happened. And even if people are jokingly wooing at it, it's like, you don't even want to jokingly woo that.
Yeah.
So it's like, I was giving as little space as possible for someone to boo it, which they could rightfully do, or woo it, which is even worse. So I'm just, I wish people would just shut up and let the comedy happen to them. But unfortunately, they're living, breathing people and they react in ways. And so, that was one part of like doing that, was just to get to really quickly, but also just to like not leave room for people to ruin it.
Yeah. Was there a specific occurrence that stands out to you as the moment where you were like, oh, fuck. I was doing a gig at like, it was, I don't know the exact name of the town, a rural town in Virginia, at like a big sports bar setup. And it was like, it was not a great setup, for what I do. And I remember like they were drunk, it was slop, but it was also like, you got the vibe in there. Like, if I had said, vote Biden, I would have got booed out of the, like, you could tell a little bit of a Trumpy room. And so I knew, typically I'm not a brave comic. Like, I don't make bravery my thing. Like, if I have enough time to do other stuff that people won't dislike, I'll just do that. Like, I don't need to be like, these people need to hear. Like, if I know you're not going to like what I'm going to do, I'm a fucking coward. Like, I will just, all right, well, I've done gigs where I'll take my set and I'm like, well, I know I'm headed to wherever, southern, fill in the blank southern city. And, I'll just cross out, okay, well, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing this. So this is a bit that I probably could have crossed off this thing, but I don't know if it was like a timing thing or whatever, but I was like, let me see. So when I say I'm sick and tired, of these goddamn immigrants, like there was a little bit of like, we're on board. And I was like, oh no. And then I said, like, and this is all in my head. And I say mostly just my father. And then it got weird because they're like, oh, whoops. We just wooed fuck these immigrants. And now this guy's the son of one. Like, so there's that moment. Yeah.
And people don't, and I'm white. So people are like, people don't even think of white, because when people hate immigrants, they don't hate white immigrants. They hate, immigrants of color. Like that's the thing, is that it's just racism. Yeah. So it was this weird moment. And then I go and do the rest of the bit. And like, it's like, I'm making fun of them at that point. I'm saying, something like, whenever I say like he's the only reason I even exist, or so, I'm like pointing out that like this is stupid and makes no sense, and so they don't love that. So the bit started good for the wrong reasons and then suffered for the right reasons. Interesting. But so that one was. But then I've also just had like really woke audiences that take too long to get like, guys, I'm not saying it. Like, you get, it's like a joke. It's like, I'm talking about my dad.
You use one of their trigger words. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you do quickly turn it. You came here from Italy, and then you make like everything very specific to your dad, calling home so they can tell you to get a real job, which is funny because then you can play into the they're taking our jobs trope right there, which is I feel like that's the angle a lot of comics take when it comes to talking about immigration, just how stupid that argument is. And you do it like Stan Hope does it, like Andrew Schultz does it. I was just watching clips of them, that's why I'm citing them specifically. Norm Macdonald talks about it, so it's been done, but you do it in a very specific, like one person way that kind of highlights the absurdity of that argument. Like, you don't have a problem with immigrants, you have a problem with your dad. And like you were saying, it kind of calls out that misplaced anger that people who hate immigrants have. Like, it's usually that hatred usually comes from a misunderstanding or an insecurity or a fear of the unknown, versus actually like having a legitimate reason for not liking people. And so I think you draw attention to that in a way that is funny. Have you done it in one of those like rural rooms where it has worked all the way through?
Yeah. I mean, I also don't think like all rural, rooms are like filled with like race. Like, I've done rooms where I'm like, this is fine. Like there's just certain rooms where like, that you get from the reactions and the energy that like, they're going to be like that. But yeah, it's worked in a lot. I mean, I mostly don't do, I'm okay doing comedy that like a room full of Trump supporters are not going to like, clearly. Right. Like my album, like there's whole parts of my album that just don't. I have racial stuff where I joke about how there's too many white people in the country. Like that doesn't work. I've done it. It doesn't work, but I'm okay doing that. But for the most part, I try not to do ones that are like only gonna work in the wokest environments too. Like mm-hmm. I do like it to be like pretty broad if I'm gonna stick with it and be putting like, or at least I try to get it there. So because it's like if it's people just cheering and agreeing, like if they like the bit because they really agree, like that sucks. Yeah. You want it to be because it's funny. So yeah, I've seen it work in both places, but it definitely has like pitfalls.
Yeah, you got to build the connection first. Like that's, to me, regardless of who's in the room, like that's rule number one. How can I connect with them first? Right. And then as that trust builds, then I'll try to sneak in something where, maybe I'm on the fence about whether or not they're going to be on board with this, but that's like half the fun is like, we built this trust. So, like any good relationship, there's going to be some misunderstandings and disagreements, and yeah, I'll win you back. I swear.
Yeah.
That push and pull, like, is that something that, you said earlier that you're not brave on stage, but that push and pull is almost like a necessary part of the audience comic relationship. Like,
yeah, totally. And I mean, I think when you're on stage, like whatever you're doing, like, I mean, I guess every time we talk about courage or bravery in comedy, it just sort of feels like, I don't know. There's people who have like legitimately dangerous jobs. Yeah. And I always feel goofy, like the bravery of you saying that bit about, it's like, oh my God, how full of ourselves can we be? Like nothing about, like, we're all cowards to just even be doing this. But within that world, I do think, yeah, there is some element of like, yeah, you're pushing back and forth with them. I just think some people get a little too like, I don't know. I'm not that idealistic about it. It's like I was brought up in comedy and taught, I guess is the word, that like the number one thing once you're in the room is like, how do I get this group of people here, even if I don't like them, to laugh? And if some people will just like, never, you do what you do and only what you do. Like there's a strict adherence to like, and it's like, I'm never going to go up there and be like, Trump's the best, I'm not going to do that. But I'm also going to go like, well, if I have 30 minutes that these people would like, I'll do that. Like, why would I do the 30 that I know they won't? Like, Yeah. So I don't get super like, it's like, I do what I want to do and I'm only doing, my stuff that I believe in, but it's, I don't know. I've definitely done like, all right, well, we're doing the sex ones. Mm-hmm. We're losing we're losing the too many white people and we're putting in a couple of porn jokes or something. Cause I foresee that's going to go better in this like half paying attention sports bar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's on brand.
Yeah,
for sure. For sure. I haven't done a sports bar in a minute. I can't wait to. I'm doing one when I'm in South Carolina, so I'm super excited.
Oh yeah, just get political and serious. They love that.
Just open up with, well, Trump was wrong about everything.
Oh man,
they're gonna love.
I was doing ones at like this southern beach town, to not be named, but it was like, yeah, I was doing stuff that I was like, they were getting uptight about stuff that I'm like, oh my God, who cares? Like, it's funny that it's like sometimes the free speech crowd is like the most uptight about stuff It's like, oh my, I thought we were doing the free speech thing. It's like, well, only the stuff that we
Yeah, right.
are kind of free speech.
Yeah, you're free to talk about what we want to hear.
Yeah.
Make me feel safe.
Yeah.
Challenge my beliefs. That's a whole other can of worms, but I want to open this can of ravioli. So when you start bringing up you being born in this country, you didn't float here on a goddamn ravioli. Like, that's an absurd use of a stereotype.
Thank you.
Which it's great. I mean, did you play with other jokes there, other visuals?
I'm trying to remember what I had there. I mean, the big thing that I think I changed was I think I always had, at least I didn't float over here on a goddamn, because my dad actually came over on a boat. And I do think that one immigrant thing that's interesting is that if you fly here, we're fine with it. It's like if you walked here or you came here on a boat, and I'm sure people have done bits about this, but like it's and it's, it relates to like class, right? It relates to class and race. So I was just sort of, playing with the idea that like, you floated over here is something that I'm sure people have, I've heard like, that kind of thing. I've heard jokes about, or people talk, refugees sort of washing up on shore, the way we think of that. So I was just kind of doing like, what's the Italian version of that, that I could be hateful toward my dad with. And so I landed there. But the thing that I played with the most was at the end of the bit, sweating like a room temperature pepperoni. I ended with making fun of my dad's sleep apnea. I was trying to keep it real. These are all real things that I find annoying about my dad. But I toward the end, at one point I was kind of like throwing out like guinea, which is like a slur for Italian people. And it just was a little bit too much. And I remember I did the joke that way for a little while. I've done the joke in front of my dad before. There was just a moment where I was like, I don't know. It felt like I could find a better way to end this, where it's clear that I'm not just like finding ways to do, I don't know, like kind of like, am I hitting Italians unnecessarily? Like the point of this isn't to like be like these fucking guinea, like, it's the point of it is to do parody. And like, if that doesn't come across exactly. So I switched that a little to something a little more jokey at the end, which I think was like a better way to go. But yeah, I think that's most of where the changes were. And then just trying to figure out different ways in at the beginning that made it clear what I was doing.
And the way you escalated at the end, I mean, that's classic, you start with the golf shirts and the sleep apnea, but then like you escalate your emotion too. Like you can feel kind of the anger in the bit kind of coming through in a way that's absurd. And then it gets to the point where it's like falling asleep or staying awake. Why don't you try staying awake through the whole movie just once? Like that's an absurd final beat that you're like this worked up about this. It's like,
well, I legitimately hate this about my dad. And that, I think that's why it kind of works, is because it's like, he will fall asleep 10, 15 minutes into a movie in the fucking recliner. Not because it's a boring movie, but because he fucking has sleep apnea. And when he gets in a recliner and he kicks it back and he's just eating a big meal or whatever, the dude's not going to make it. So he falls asleep and then he'll wake up like the last 20 minutes of the movie, be like, this stinks. Are we still watching? Like, and it's like, it stinks because you don't understand what's happening, because you missed the entire movie. Like, just like, if you're going to fall asleep during the movie, you shouldn't have an opinion at the end. Right. You should just go, I fell asleep. And it's not like he thinks in his mind, I like that the whole podcast is just going to be me fully airing this grievance, but he thinks it's because he thinks it's like a sense that he has that, like, if it's a boring movie, that's why he fell asleep. I'd be like, you have fallen asleep. I've seen him over the years fall asleep through every genre of movie. He will fall asleep during a Jason Statham movie where we're going from like car chase to explosion to bankrupt. Like, it's not like he's just snoozing during like, you know, like British period pieces. Like it's, so it drives me crazy that he doesn't get that. It's like, dude, you fall asleep during movies. You have no, it's not about the movie. It's about you.
Yeah. That's so funny. Both of my parents do it. So like if I ever go over there for dinner or whatever, and then like, oh, let's watch a movie. I'm like, how about let's not do that, because I end up being the only one who's watching the movie.
Right.
And then at the end, you know.
Yeah, especially they'll have like strong opinions on what movie you're picking, and you're like, you're not going to be conscious through this. Let me. Maybe you don't want to watch it, but like I'll like. Yeah.
Yeah. No, my dad is the exact same way. Like everything you said, from golf shirts to sleep apnea to falling asleep during a movie to you don't come to my country and teach me how to play Little League. Like, I mean, just that's all real across the board dad stuff. Like.
Now for the gotcha question. How long have you been a self-loathing Italian?
Ooh, I like that. Yeah. Probably my entire life. Yeah, from the get-go. Yeah. No, it's fun. It's funny. Like I do. I mean, I do feel like there's people who have like such like, and I'm working on a bit about this now, but like the Italian pride can be like real hot. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I've always been like, I obviously love Italian people. I love the food. I can speak the language a little bit. I like, went abroad there when I was in college. Like I love it, but it's like, people are so like, like people get touchy about it. Yeah. I had a bit about, Columbus that people would get. And I just remember being like, guys, who cares? What do we?
The whole Italian pride thing was always very confusing to me, because that, in my mind, that means your ancestors at one point, I don't know, right around World War II, were on the wrong side of history.
Yeah.
And no one really talks about the Italian involvement in World War II and which side they were on. Like they were
It's funny that you're saying that, because I literally, I now have a bit where I mention that, where I talk about what I'm making fun of, like white allies, and I say because I'm making fun of, like, you know, historically speaking, like white allies are white people are allies the way Italy was an ally in World War II. Like
that's
like
good.
kind of on the wrong side for the first half.
Yes,
you know. And so it's in a separate bit, but yeah, I think about that all the time. But I mean, whatever. Every, you know, I don't think our culture really gets judged on like whatever worst thing they did historically, because then, I mean, Jesus, we're all the worst. But yeah, to me, the pride belongs in the food area, because Italian food is just amazing. So it doesn't belong with our like historical figures.
Maybe that's why they were so culturally acceptable, because Italians never really made too spicy of a dish. You know what I mean? Like these Mexicans came by with their jalapenos and their spicy tacos, and it burned the white people's mouths, and they're like, "Fuck Mexicans!" And then Italians come in with this nice red sauce, not too spicy of a meatball, nice palatable dishes.
I love this retelling of history. That's not true. Where first Mexicans get here, and then they burn everyone's mouths, and then Italians
like, "You're poisoning us."
I love it. It's great. I'm going with that from now on. That's the history.
You can have it.
And that's why we like the Scandinavians so much. Yeah. There's no flavor. Doesn't betray our Midwestern palates.
Swedish meatballs is the #1 dish in America because it's never wronged anybody. It? No, I have no idea.
Oh, do you see how that affected me?
Yeah.
When you said Swedish I was like, oh no, like, are you serious? Like I was about to just hate, like I wouldn't have been able to get off of that.
Well, I'm sorry I hit your trigger word.
You did. Did you see my? I was like,
yeah.
Oh that's my God,
that's your version of woke. Swedish meatballs.
It's like, come on, Italians, we got to rally. We got to take back the meatball wars.
Yeah.
From IKEA. Jesus.
Yeah,
and I've always,
pride.
I love the Columbus bit. And I wanted to take this episode in two directions, either the Italian pride direction or the immigration direction. But I wanted to go with the immigrant bit. But I mean, so my girlfriend used to live in Cleveland's Little Italy. And on
I didn't know you guys had one.
Yes, we do.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a cool neighborhood. A lot of good Italian spots.
It's cool if you're
that
white.
are actually run by Italians, unlike New York's Little Italy.
No, it's cool if you're white.
Yeah, that is true. It's not known for they're not known for being kind to those of the darker persuasion. But they have a little Christopher Columbus parade every single year, and to me that's baffling because the guy was Italian, but you mentioned it, wasn't a great dude, but also he didn't even discover America under the Italian flag. Like he did that shit for your rivals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why are we still celebrating the guy? That's always a question that I've had that baffles. But when I ask an Italian, it's like, listen, man.
Yeah.
All right.
He did it on Spanish ships.
Yeah. Spanish money.
Yeah.
He planted the Spanish flag. Like what? That would be like if the American basketball team were like, you know what, we're gonna do this for Russia. They haven't won one in a while, and they're gonna give us more money. So So Kevin Durant's like wearing one of those like Russian. I don't know. That's my analogy here.
I like the picture of Kevin Durant wearing a Russian hat.
Yeah, they're all just wearing capes or whatever the fuck they do over there. I don't know.
I like how we're talking about the issue of immigration all seriously, and then we're like, fucking Russians, right? Though wearing capes and shit.
Hold on, that's actually kind of appropriate.
Oh,
Wearing a Marx for those listening to the podcast.
He's wearing a Marxism.
I don't know why all of my bits today have been like visuals.
Yeah, right. You need to respect the medium, Jeremy. There was one other piece of this bit before we move on to This Land Is Your Land that I wanted to kind of dive into was you talking about being born in the USA. And then the next line is, I don't care if I literally wouldn't exist without you. Was that placed to kind of make that sneaky little like immigration, like here's my position on it, but I'm going to sneak it in.
Yeah, I'm doing a couple things during the bit where I'm kind of going in two directions. I'm doing the whole thing with the tone of a rant against immigrants and some of this like types of things they say float over here on a ravioli. Like, I'm kind of paralleling it. But then as I'm doing that, I'm also pointing out at different points where I think, kind of their arguments fall apart, right? Which is that, this is a country of immigrants. Like we wouldn't exist without them. When I'm saying I wouldn't be here without you, I'm kind of pointing that out. And then when I say like, I think even when I'm saying like, you don't come to this country and teach me how to play Little League baseball, I'm pointing out that like, these are people who just like, do like, they're people and they're doing things, they're making us who we are. So to me, that it's just sort of like the undercurrent of like where I stand, but not taking too much away from really where I'm headed, which is like I'm peaking at hatred and like parody of an immigrant rant. But yeah, there's a couple things that I tossed in just sort of throughout to kind of like nod to the fact that, I think these are bad arguments.
Mm-hmm. And you humanize, I mean, just the Little League baseball thing, like it's like that could be your neighbor, like that could be, you. Yeah. Like you did Little League baseball when you were a kid. Your dad taught you Little League baseball because his dad taught him, and it's all the way back. Yeah, and also like it's showing that's like I mean, not that I'm the best example because it's it's a white immigrant, like there's some parts of this that are not, this is not but it's like this is just they're like you.
Like there's some element is like, yeah, you know how like, your dad, like, it's like, they're not different. They're people. So I think part of it was just showing that too, that like, as I'm ranting against my own father, which is absurd to some extent, like it's kind of showing that play out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's your story too. Like it's your dad. So if anybody says, hey, you can't do that, talk about my own dad. What do you mean?
Unless, of course, it's your dad's best friend, then maybe.
It was funny because, like, my like people who know my dad, like, family and whatever, who saw the bit, they're like, yeah, you really got him. Like, like their view on it was just like that. It was fun that I was talking trash about my dad. Like, they didn't. I don't think they really broke it down to the level we are. They're like, I got him with the sleep apnea thing. That's great. Like it's, it was kind of like that. Because like Italians are, culturally speaking, great ball busters.
Historically speaking, yes, they're great ball busters.
And the humanizing of it, like that's what I like the most, because the argument itself is absurd to me. It's like I've been trying to work on a bit where it's just like, we are literally the only intelligent species in the entire universe that we know of. So why are we getting mad at it because somebody doesn't look like us? Like, it's such an absurd conversation. I want in 20 years to not have to do a podcast episode about this. I don't want anybody to have to do a podcast episode about this, because they realize the absurdity of this argument, where it's like somebody who isn't like me, rather than making that judgment and making statements and reacting with fear, instead reacts with curiosity and questions and, how can I help? That sort of altruistic mentality. But I live in a optimistic pipe dream. So, to me, your bit is a step in that direction. And so,
good. I think what we're saying is that my bit solved xenophobia.
100%. Everybody needs to listen to it. Put yourself in those shoes. All right. And then the last part of the second half of the bit, Gheramy, if you want to go ahead and play the next track, and then we'll quickly just talk about the statement that you're making here.
I should have been more prepared.
It's all right.
That's the beginning of the bit, is Gheramy whispering.
I was not ready for this next track on the album.
I do love this bit. I got to listen to it. It was pretty good.
Yeah, we'll see why.
But there's people in this country right now who really do actually hate immigrants. And I just think that's so sad, especially given our history as a country. Nobody in America should hate immigrants, except Native Americans. They have like an airtight case. How could they not hate people who arrive at the country? But to be fair, like, that wasn't Mexicans, right? That wasn't Muslims. White people, by far the worst immigrants. This is how fucked up the white mentality is. And I might not be the right spokesperson for this. But we wrote a song called This Land Is Your Land, where the second line is, this land is my land. What? That is the whitest song ever written. I'm including Toby Keith, okay? It's like, listen, this land is your land, this land is my land. Who's to say? Whose land it is? Messed up.
All right. Where did that part of the bit come from? Was that always after the previous?
Yeah, I was pretty much doing that after. I mean, I guess there were probably times when I broke it off separately, but like, yeah, for the most part, just sort of coming after talking about that idea. I think it mostly, I mean, yeah, it's sort of, I guess it just sort of struck me like the idea of people coming to a country. So when I started thinking about, like, I'm essentially saying like we're a country of immigrants, but even that has like an element of, I just want to acknowledge that also, we're like historically the worst at this. Like actually, like, we didn't just take someone's job which also is a bad art, but like, the idea that's like, we were the worst immigrants, as white people. And then when I got that, the song thing, I was like, okay, this is good. Like this works as a line. And I don't think people saw exactly where it was going. Like they might have got the direction, but I think the punchline lands quickly and avoids like people kind of knowing where I'm going. So yeah, those are like the two bits I was just trying to like kind of tag onto. But when I listen back to this bit, and I know this isn't quite what you guys discussing, but like the live recording of this was a nightmare, this particular bit, because at the Late Show, because you record 2 shows, right? Mm-hmm. And that way, if something goes wrong, so like luckily, like it came together okay on the album because I was able to like switch from one show to the other, or like cut out the part in the middle of this where there was a very drunk guy who fell asleep during the show. Like an old guy it wasn't my dad, but an older guy in the back. I don't know why he was there. It was very weird because the crowd was like mostly like young people drinking, whatever. Very old guy in the back falls asleep, which like I didn't know and wasn't a problem. But then at some point, and that point was like halfway through this bit, he starts having night terrors. And so,
wow.
And so he starts. He's like waking up and going like, and then going back to like, so I hear some commotion. I don't know what's going on. And then the venue starts like taking this guy out of the, like kicking him out. But he was so drunk. It wasn't like he was a guy, like he wasn't fighting it, but he also could barely walk. So he, like in the middle of this bit, I had to pause and wait for like a 60-something, 70-year-old man to be like a war, like somebody helps somebody out of a war if their like leg has been shot. Like he's got like 2 arms over each piece, like being literally like helped out of the venue. And so there is you don't hear that in the album recording, but every time I listen back to this bit, I'm like, it triggers in me like reliving, like, how am I going to get this punchline to land?
Yeah.
So I stopped, let it happen, kind of got the crowd back a little bit and then get back into the bit. And then we were able to cut out that part in the middle. But yeah, it was whenever I hear this bit, like when I heard that, the album recording, I was just like put right back there. Like, oh God damn it, what is happening?
Yeah. The little behind the scenes director commentary there on the bit.
Right.
Man, that's like, how do you, especially a bit like this, like that takes listening, takes.
You're also getting serious for a minute.
Yeah.
So it's like to like get that moment. It was, there was a couple things during the live recording that were like tough. That was definitely a lesson I learned was like, live recording an album is still live. I mean, you're recording and you can add, but it's like things can go wrong and they do. But yeah, to your question, like, those are sort of the 2 parts of this bit that I was like trying to get across was like the Native American angle, which I think is really interesting. And then just the dumb song. I mean, I was trying to take something patriotic and just point out like there's another layer to this.
I love this bit, and here comes the big reveal. I'm actually half Native American, half Arab. So it's like I kind of get a little bit of both of like, half of my lineage has been here the whole time and the other half immigrated here from Lebanon. So I love this bit because immediately in my head it opened up a whole new avenue of how to rethink certain aspects of being Native American in this country. Like the first thing I wrote down after hearing this bit was, we built the wall in the wrong area. Like the wall shouldn't be on the Mexican border. The wall should have been on Ellis Island, keeping all these white immigrants out.
Right.
Keeping my people out.
Yes, exactly. Because at least, you know, we're closer related to the Mexicans. So we're like practically cousins.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this land is
misleading.
land is your land. This land is my land. I love that. That's so brilliant. Like the whole bit's so good.
Thank you.
The whispering of this land is my land. Like that really shifts the context of the song. You don't even change the words. Like
no,
you just
it's just the intonation.
Yeah.
And well, also I'm setting it up like I couldn't do it with just, I'm talking about it before. So like you get what when I bring it up, the Native Americans, if you do that, but then when you say it, they're like that context of it, which is funny because it's not a context that doesn't already exist.
Right.
Like I'm not like really bending over backward, to point out like the origins of the country that we're proud of and singing this song about and then that when I do at the end, when I go like, I mean, whose land? Who's to say? It is. Then it becomes kind of like it was like a way to cloud. Like the song is a way to cloud it. Like this land is your. Like it's this land is my land. Like it's whose land is. Like that's a sort of like making it like a. I almost think of that voice as being like an Italian guy, like sort of like a mobster guy. Like whose land is it though? Like just doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, you could do that with that same line over and over again and say so many different things without changing any of the lyrics.
Oh my God, how funny would it be that like a Native American would be like, "Hey, paisan, go back to your country."
Yeah, they just didn't have any good insults. That was where they fell short.
We should have been better ball busters. That's what really that was the downfall for us.
Right.
Yeah. And the setup to this joke too, it's a little bit lengthier and I mean you said you state what's been stated ad nauseum about, Native Americans have an airtight case that we're the worst immigrants. But like you pepper in little punches throughout the setup to kind of ease the tension as you build the tension to get to the song, which again, that's a great framing of completing the argument here. Did you try any other ways to like frame the argument other than that song?
No. And to be clear, like, I think the way you're saying this is like, it's not, I get what you're saying, but it's kind of not the way I think about things. Like when I'm writing, like, I don't go like, how do I frame this argument? I found a funny punchline with this land is your land. This land. I'm like it's like magic trick. Like, I'm like, ooh, I got a good thing. Like I have no integrity as an arguer. I'm just like, I have a good punchline here. I have a good punchline here. How do I remove everything in between and make it keep making sense? Or can I add another fun? Like I think people think about things differently. Because there is a way to do it where I'm not to say you can't create comedy from like an argument and then but like, I just don't do it. I found something. I found a good piece here, and I'm just purely trying to make try to get from one thing to another, have it make sense. And if I can add a funny part, but even if something that helps the argument or like makes my position, like, or like whatever is not as funny as the thing that's there, it's gone. I don't, I have no integrity as like a person building an argument. I just am trying to get from punchline to punchline that way. So like, I wasn't even thinking of like this as an argument. Like when I was doing it, like in I go like song punchline is probably going to be where it lands. Native American turn helps me get there. That punch, like, and like, I'm just trying to make the parts that get it there funnier. But yeah, that's kind of how I think about it.
Okay.
Way to use Native Americans as a way to get to where you want to go.
Sorry, say that again.
I said, way to use Native Americans again to get to where you want to go.
You guys are simply a means to an end for me as the white person. And I want to thank you and all Native Americans for being a stepping stone.
I love that. I love that approach to writing comedy. Like, I think too often that most comedians get caught up on what is the messaging of whatever it is they're talking about, and they forget that they're supposed to be funny first.
Yeah.
And I think you're.
By the way, I don't want to throw David. I think I know where you were going with that. It wasn't like I didn't mean to be like, David, you're thinking about comedy all right. It's like it was just the way you took it. It was just the way you phrased the question. But like I know what you were asking. But yeah, I do think sometimes people get hung up or just it's different. People have different processes too. Like I say I was taught, but like it wasn't like I had a teacher. Like it was like when I was coming up. Older guys were around, like, so, you were having conversations, whatever. But to me, it's just about like, so many people get like, they see a really good comic. This is what I think a pitfall is. You see a really good comic who is being funny and saying something interesting in the realm of an argument. Like they're saying something that's like meaningful or makes a good point or whatever. And I think they think, oh, well, I want to do that. So I'll start trying to find ways to be interesting and whatever. And it's like, not that that's not important, but it's the way easier thing to do, in my opinion. The way harder thing to do is to like, just find the funniest things and then dress it up like an argument almost. Or like, I guess there are times when I'm like, I want to be talking sort of about this, but everything that doesn't have, if I don't find anything that really pops in that vein, it's gone. And I'm mostly just searching for, sort of blindly searching for a punchline that hits. And then taking out everything else.
Yeah, I do it both ways. I always have to remind myself to avoid that. It's like, no, you need like, a lot of my arguments I find a funny punchline. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to build an argument around this. And then that punchline loses its oomph. And then I cut all the fat and then it's back again. And I found a tag or I found something else. It's just a process that I kind of have to work through and make those discoveries through the arduous process of cutting and
weirdly, it's the only part. I shouldn't say the only part. One of the only parts of comedy that I enjoy is like new thing, fiddling. I love to fucking fiddle with things. And some people I feel like hate that. They're like, oh, they love the pure discovery of like, I found the punch, like I found something that makes people laugh. And there's people who go on stage and they're like, I'm just going to kind of talk and then see what, and I don't do that at all. Like I find a funny thing and then I'm very like, I love the process of fiddling ad nauseum with it. I think that's why, honestly, like, I mean, it took me a while before I put out my first album. And one of the reasons is I just fiddle with the fuck, like, and I try to like, there is a point now where I have like, I'm looking at this like board over to my left, but like I have like columns and I'm like, I do try to put it over in the right column when it's pretty much done and be like, all right, Brian, just, cut the shit. Like it's there. But yeah, I love doing that process.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun.
It's
fun. Yeah.
It's cliche to say, love the process, but really comedy is about the process. Like it's just a never ending process of tweaking and rewriting and performing and learning and doing it all over again.
Yeah.
Or just taking something so silly or obscure in and of itself and then having it be kind of like there is kind of like this message behind, like the ravioli bit, like that's really funny, but it's kind of a dig on what you're talking about. Like I have this bit about how I'm afraid of ants because I'm being Native American. I'm afraid of anything that colonizes. And then I go, you're probably thinking to yourself, Gheramy, how did you know that those were colonizing ants? And I say, because they spoke in English accents.
Right.
But that's so silly and obscure. but and it's my way of talking about something that is somewhat serious to me, but in such a weird, silly way to bring this idea to you.
Yeah. And I mean, I think anytime you're just saying something that's like obviously not like, I think people get too hung up on like, I'm going to really talk about like, some people can pull this off. I'm going to really talk about who I am. I'm going to keep everything like, there's never going to be anything that's not like real.
Yeah.
And actual. And it's like, there's so much fun in the silly realm with just saying things that are just, blatantly under, like, like an ant talk to you in an accent. Like, I love taking it outside of the realm of just like what is.
Right.
No one's like, wait a minute. That's not.
Ain't no ant talk to you. Well, I feel like people are too hung up on, there's a difference between being like true and being like honest. Like, I think you can be honest without being true. And it's like, you don't want to be dishonest. You don't want to be doing, I remember there was like, there's been comics who like, you find out like they're like, it's like, wait a second, you're lying blatantly about who you are. Like, it's like, you don't want to be doing that. I don't think.
I mean, it depends on how serious the lie is. Like,
I have cancer.
Right. Yeah.
That's the person I'm thinking about in my head who's doing jokes as if they had cancer. You don't want to be doing that.
Right.
But like, like it doesn't need to be like, fiddle with whatever the thing is to make the joke work. Who cares? Whether it's all exactly accurate, what.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cause my advice a lot of the times, sometimes I always say like, it doesn't have to be true. It just has to be funny. I'm now really, really rethinking that stance, considering like, if somebody's going up there and saying like, oh, I have cancer, or, my dad died during 9/11, and then we go and find out his dad's still alive and well. It's like, why the fuck would you lie about something like that? Like, sure, it could have been funny, but the fact that it's not true makes it now not funny at all.
Yeah.
So
those are sort of like outliers. I think most comedy lying is like, you didn't really go on a date with that girl. Right. Yeah. It's a lot of people who don't go on dates talking about dating.
Depends on who the woman is.
What's that?
Depends on who the woman is.
Right.
Or the statute of limitations on, so I was at the store the other day. Like,
or like,
we know this happened. You've been telling this joke for
I went
5
on
years.
a date with Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yeah.
No, you didn't.
What a reference. Brian, if you could give any advice to a comic who is working on trying to put together a bit about like immigration, how would you point them in the right direction?
I mean, I don't know if I would. I don't know. No, it's just like, I don't know how, like, I could probably
fuck them. Yeah, fuck them. You figure it out.
No, I guess I just like, to me, right, part of the whole thing is that like, I'm sure that people who are putting together a bit about immigration, especially if they are immigrant, like I would never, it's like, I don't know, talk about your shit, talk about your experience. Like it's sort of like, there's not a way to talk about this stuff. I don't think. I mean, I would caution a new comic who is doing a bit about immigration to be like, what do you say? Like, is what you're saying, do you really feel that way? Because I think some people get, so I've heard really bad ones where like, it's just racist jokes dressed up as immigration jokes, right? Like I have heard those. So I, if someone's new, it's always like, talk from your experience. Don't, think about what you're actually like after you come up with something funny. Like, is this something that people haven't already said? Like, I don't know. Just think about your stuff. Think about it. Think about the jokes you're telling.
How can you make this yours?
Not great advice. Yeah, but like, I don't think there's any overall, because I'm doing it one way, but I've seen it done many other ways that are funny too. Yeah.
All right. And then if anyone, were to say you can't laugh at immigration, how would you counter that argument? Like if you were in a conversation with somebody?
Oh, I probably would just leave. I mean, I don't know. Like, who is this person? Like, who can? Like, do I have to talk to this person? I don't know. I guess I would. To me, I think the idea of the way you've stated it is sort of that anything can be. What's the name of the show again? Sorry.
Yeah, you can't laugh at that.
You can't laugh at that. Yeah. So, I mean, I do think that anything can be funny. I mean, also counterpoint, anything can be wildly unfunny and offensive. So like, I think it just depends on like how you do it. But I mean, there's so many good, I feel like there's lots of good stuff about, lots of good immigration related material. A lot of it comes from immigrants. Like I have seen jokes about immigration that I don't like, for sure. So you could do those too. But there's room. I mean, it's a whole group of people who like have like part of their experience is this thing. So yeah, it would be wild to say you can't do jokes about immigration. So yeah, I would probably just avoid that person entirely. I would say follow me at David Horning. I would say
yeah. And that's, that you make that point, like just like you can laugh at anything, like there are bounds to, like anything can be wildly unfunny in the same way. I mean, yesterday was 9/11 and like I saw so many hack jokes on Twitter, and it's like, at least make it funny. Like you can laugh at it. We know that over the last 20 years, we've seen it, we've laughed about it, but not like that. Like,
I mean, it's also, there's this compulsion. I think it's almost like, like comedian, like certain, I have to, it's like, you don't have to do, maybe you like the challenge or whatever, but it's not, to me, I've never been like, who's a really great comedian is that comedian who he's got a joke about rape and 9/11 and it's, and black, like he's just doing all the things that you think you can't do. Like there's that lame, ooh, I said it element in comedy, which is like, like who gives a shit? Yeah. Like, just, are you fun? Like, do funnies, like do whatever you find funny. Like you don't need to always, if your thing is that you're pushing the envelope, like to me, that's very lame. Like if you end up pushing the envelope by doing what you want to do and being funny, like, okay, but I don't know.
It gets kind of taxing when comedy becomes this like political debate, you know what I mean? Or like this stance of like social issues and blah, blah, blah. Like it doesn't have to be that. No, it doesn't.
Yeah. Don't push the envelope just to push the envelope. If you have a reason why you're doing it, like, then I can pass that. Like, that's okay to me. But if you're just doing it to do it, it's you're just like the guy who's like chiming in to try to be funny because he wants to be part of the conversation. It's like, that doesn't.
Right. And if you're, it's like the perfect example would be like, the 9/11 thing, 20th anniversary just happened. It's like you're posting it like on 9/11. Like if it was just if you just had a really funny 9/11 idea or joke, you could post it in May. Like, like it's part of this does feel like it's like, it's like poking at people to get a reaction. And it's like, okay, like, well, you did it. Wow. Yeah. You, what bravery it takes, it's like, fucking, to repost a tweet. It's like, oh God, get over yourself.
Yeah. I mean, the argument is like, is it really funny if the joke isn't evergreen? Like if you can't do that joke and so, a joke on like it being 9/11 in July, then it's probably not that good of a joke.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are jokes that are kind of funny that like involve 9/11, but it's like, do they need to happen when people, this whole day, the whole idea is that it's like a day to remember. But I don't know, it just feels like a weird. I have no impulse to ever do that.
Yeah. Same.
And I don't know. I'm not super judgy usually about comedy. It's like, there's certain things. It's like, I don't know. Just do you have like, who can, it's like, why do you explore why you want to do this? Think about like what makes you feel like, to me, the point of comedy is to kind of like share stuff with people to make them laugh. I don't know. It just feels like a weird, there are certain things and that are like, I think people do them because they just want to poke at people and get like, they want to be yelled at. And then they want to be like, oh, my comedy's so, look at people yelling at me. So it's like, oh my God, just like get attention from someone else, like get friends.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. Just get friends, just get a fucking, do something else.
Well, odds are good. The people who are talking about are the ones who have friends. You know what I'm saying? Like they're like the funniest person in their friend group. It's like, if you have friends and are a well-adjusted individual, then you have no need to be a comedian. Just go be funny in front of your friends.
Fair point. All right. Brian, where could we find you on social media? And do you have anything you want to plug?
Sure. Yeah, I'm at Parise Comedy. So that's Parise Comedy. And I'm there both on Instagram and Twitter. I'm not very active on Twitter, but I am on Instagram a fair bit. I post videos on there sometimes, and I post where I'm going to be playing as well. So I would say check me out on there, and I post where I'm at. So come out and see a show sometime.
All right, that was Brian Parise. Gheramy, anything you want to add?
I have a show at Gunzelman's Tavern September 19th. Be there or be square. Dave, you're on that show.
I am on that show. Fly in.
Dave, did you know that before? Did you know that, or did he just book you just then?
I just got.
That's how I do it.
Dave,
so
you're on that
exciting.
show. You should know.
Dave, you're going to be on that show. You're going to show up,
and I'll be COVID free. I'm taking a test tomorrow to make sure that it's gone.
You're going to show up. You're going to be charming.
Yes.
You're
well, I don't know.
David
Maybe I'm going to get up there
thing.
and try to be funny. I got some 9/11 jokes that I'm really aching to.
They won't land.
Aching to tell.
That's the problem with 9/11 jokes. They never land.
Ugh. We're editing that.
Please.
The best
edit that out.
Joke that oh, come on. The best 9/11 joke that I saw yesterday was it was a 6th degree of Kevin Bacon joke, actually, disguised as a 9/11 joke. And if you could take a topic like that or like immigration and prove that you can laugh at it, then you've got a place on our podcast. So, Brian, I appreciate you joining us today to help prove that.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, man. And that'll do it for this episode.
You can't laugh at that.